but soon I heard the slow, eerie creaking of a door being opened. With caution, I lifted the blanket to investigate. About 10 years ago, during my college years, I faced a daily 2-hour commute from home to school, a situation that took a toll on my academic performance. Late classes often led to late arrivals back home, and missing the bus meant being late for classes. Frustrated with these challenges, I decided to find temporary accommodation closer to the campus. With the money I had saved during the summer from a part-time job, I made the decision to move to a neighborhood known for having many affordable rooms. The next day after my last class, I ventured into the area. There were posts with phone numbers on utility poles and walls all over the place advertising available rental units. Even though the rentals were much cheaper compared to other areas, they were still beyond my budget, representing a significant challenge. I briefly considered giving up, but as I was about to leave the neighborhood, my attention was drawn to an old, weathered door with a handwritten sign. Surprisingly, it was priced at more than half the rate of other places. Without hesitation, I dialed the number inscribed on the wall. "Hello, I saw the rental ad on the wall and called." An elderly lady answered the phone. She was the landlord. Following her instructions, I met with her and entered the house. I began explaining my situation to the elderly woman. I stressed my need for a room while admitting my limited budget. Without hesitation, the elderly landlord immediately offered to reduce the monthly rent on the spot, charging me only half of the regular price. I was genuinely touched by her kindness. She then ripped a blank page out of a spiral notebook, hastily scribbled something and handed it to me, explaining that it was the contract. It seemed quite informal, which briefly puzzled me, but given the affordable housing option before me, I felt satisfied and happy. My room, located across from the landlord's room, was well maintained and clean, a pleasant surprise. However, one oddity caught my attention: a sealed attic door in one corner, covered with thick masking tape around the door edges. Upon inquiring about it, the landlord explained that it was an attic door sealed to protect against harsh winter winds. Satisfied with her plausible explanation, I didn't harbor any suspicions. Instead, I wondered if the sealed tape would keep the room warm during the cold winter nights. Fortunately, the landlord diligently kept the room warm every night with heating, making my stay more comfortable than I had expected. Several days passed, and then one night, something unusual occurred. I was awakened by an unfamiliar sound. Glancing at the clock, I saw that it was 3 in the morning, an odd time to be awake with at least 3 more hours until my usual wake-up time. Deciding to go back to sleep, I was nonetheless disturbed by the noise. I pulled the blanket over my head in an attempt to return to sleep, but soon I heard the slow, eerie creaking of a door being opened. With caution, I lifted the blanket to investigate. To my surprise, I found the attic door partially open. This explained the noise I had heard earlier, the sound of tape being peeled off the door. At first, I tried to reassure myself by attributing it to the tape adhesive weakening with age. I grabbed a new roll of tape and began to secure the door, making sure it couldn't open on its own. I thought I had solved the issue. I was on my way home after finishing my evening class the next day. As I entered the alley leading to the house, I noticed a strange man standing in front of the house. This man had a tattoo on the back of his neck, about the size of a hand. Nowadays, it might not be considered a big deal, but back then, people with tattoos were mostly associated with gangsters or thugs. Without even realizing it, I flinched a bit and asked, "Who are you?" He replied,
"I used to live here. Do you live here now?"
"Yes, are you looking for something?"
"I'm looking for mail addressed to a girl named Jane Jones."
"Jane Jones? I recently moved here, so I don't know," I replied. He then asked if there was anything unusual happening in the attic. I was taken aback, and I suggested that he should ask the landlord. Then the man suddenly disappeared as if he was fleeing. When I entered the house, it was silent, and it appeared that the landlord was already asleep. Exhausted, I made my way to my room and collapsed into bed. I had been sleeping for some time when an unexpected chill washed over me. I shifted slightly and noticed that the attic door, tightly sealed with layer upon layer of tape just the previous day, was now wide open. At first, I thought that when it happened the first time, it might have been due to the tape deteriorating or naturally coming off. However, I soon realized that the tape couldn't have been the culprit because I had taken great care to secure it layer by layer with a new one, ensuring it wouldn't peel off easily. Unless it had been deliberately cut with a sharp object, there was no way it could have simply peeled off on its own. I also dismissed the possibility of it being caused by the wind, as it couldn't have dislodged so easily by itself. As I grappled with this perplexing situation, unsettling thoughts began to creep into my mind. I found myself contemplating bizarre scenarios such as, did the landlord lock someone in the attic? Ultimately, I resolved to investigate. I turned on the flashlight of my phone and cautiously ascended the attic stairs. As I reached the attic, the predominant thought that struck me was that I had made a grave mistake. What confronted me was beyond eerie. The walls were filled with numerous intimidating talismans, and just standing before them, I could sense an ominous energy. However, what truly left me frozen was the sight of the final talisman. Amidst the array of symbols, there was a photograph of a woman, with the name written as Jane Jones. Panic set in as I realized that this woman was the one the strange man had been searching for earlier. I hesitated and stepped back, and the air still held a lingering scent of incense, with an offering table freshly arranged nearby. I shifted my phone to the side and my eyes followed. The girl I saw in the photograph attached to the talisman is now standing in the corner of the room. The shock was so profound that I instinctively moved away, looking for a way out in the dark. Fortunately, I found another door that provided an exit from the attic, ending up on the rooftop, trembling in fear of being discovered. As I raised my head, a voice broke the silence.
Did you go into the attic?
It was the landlord lady who had come up to the rooftop. She promptly closed the attic door and began to recount the story of the young woman ghost I had just encountered. The young woman ghost I saw was a girl who used to live here. She had invited her boyfriend every day, and one day she became pregnant. From that moment on, her boyfriend subjected her to relentless abuse, resulting in the loss of her baby. The boyfriend fled on that fateful day and never returned. However, the young woman, facing her struggles alone, chose to end her life in the attic. It appeared that even after her death, this young woman ghost held on to her grudge and refused to leave this house. Out of pity, the landlord had been attempting to appease the ghost in the attic every day by making offerings and burning incense. As I listened to the story, I recalled the man who had stood in front of the house earlier looking for mails addressed to someone named Jane Jones.
I'm looking for mail addressed to a girl named Jane Jones.
The deceased young woman's name was Jane Jones, and this man had been looking for her mails. I mentioned this to the landlord lady, and she suddenly asked,
Have you seen that man? The one responsible for the girl's death. He had a tattoo on the back of his neck.
The man who had repeatedly asked me about the attic was Jane Jones' boyfriend, the one responsible for her tragic demise. I could no longer stay in that house. I promptly left the room and never returned to that area. However, a lingering question remained. Was it the ghost of that girl who had been opening the attic door every night? When would she be free from the attic?